Okay, I think this is live. Uh, yeah. There's always, when you watch a stream, there's always those awkward first, like, couple minutes when the streamer is figuring out how things work, and I am very much in that position right now. Can't tell if I'm live. One moment. Let me check on my phone. Okay. I think I am live. I'm just gonna go for it. So, yeah, welcome. I just was gonna do some pure data patching this morning before work, and thought it would be fun to kind of broadcast or stream it and kind of talk through my processes I was doing. So, just as a, I don't know, an exercise to let some people into the process, and for me to kind of verbalize a lot of my understanding of this stuff is like very kind of internal to me, and I don't really uh, externalize it or talk about it that much. So I thought it might be fun just to do that and see how it feels, and see if this, yeah, feels like a good fit for something I might like to do more in the future. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, anyway, today I had a couple things I wanted to try to do. So the first one is I started making this new abstraction. For now, I'm just calling it Weaver. And I think it works. I think it works, but I haven't tested it. So the things, the main thing I wanted to do today was kind of make an interface for it. So like a lot of my patches that I like lately, I've been making kind of nice UIs for them so that they're easier to use for myself in the future. So I wanted to try and make a UI for Weaver, and then once I've done that, just try and test it in a patch and see how it goes. So, and the reason I've started making UIs like this is, I think Acreal, it's been years since I watched this, but I think maybe in a talk he did or a video or something, he talked about doing this and said that the reason, I don't actually remember his reasoning, but what I'm getting out of it is, well, one, it's much easier after like a year to come back to a patch and understand how like an interface like this works versus just having three inlets or whatever and not knowing which one does what, and if the order of operations for, you know, passing things in matters and all that kind of stuff. So it's just easier for myself in the future when I inevitably forget how all this stuff works. And then the other part of it is taking this one as an example. This one's a generative sequencer. So there's always kind of two parts to it. So there's, this part is the interface, and I always put this in a like dot params thing. It's really messy just because I kind of just get it to work and don't ever come back to it or think about it. So yeah, the params is just getting this little UI to function, and then it passes out lists in the form of a message and then a number. So anytime I kind of make a change in the interface, it'll pass out a corresponding message, and that goes into the actual implementation, which is like the logic of how the whole thing works. And this is really useful because if I wanted to, and I did this a couple times in January, I can make just the UI part. So this doesn't have the implementation at all, this one. And then I can send it out and then have multiple implementations. Here we go in the right inlet. Yeah, so I could say, I don't know, have like 4 of these things. So these would all be kind of independent generative sequencers that are each pumping out their own sequence, but they would all respond to this single control panel. So that's kind of why it can be useful to have, the other reason why it can be useful to have the kind of UI separate from the implementation, because you can connect a single UI instance to multiple implementations, which can be pretty fun and pretty powerful. So yeah, so for today, what's going on? Something's happened. Oh, I see what happened. Yeah, so for today, I wanted to make a UI for this new thing, and I'll describe what this does in a little bit, but so why don't I just make 2 new patches. This one, I'm just going to save it, PD core, it's going to be called weaver.params, and then I'll make another new one. It's going to be weaver.impl, and I'm going to just copy the current implementation and paste it into this implementation file, and then the current weaver, too many windows. This one I'm just going to delete everything from it. So yeah, so we've got the 3 patches. So the way the Weaver one, the main one, always works is I've got as many inlets as the implementation requires. So it's going to be 3, actually it's going to be 4, because I'll need one more to actually pass the messages in. And then we'll have our weaver.params, and I think this one only does this one need any? I don't think this needs any inlets. It's just going to have an outlet. Let me look at this sequencer one for reference. So I do tend to pass inlets, and why do I do that? Well, I'll just do it the same way. Okay, let's just do it that way. And then we'll set up the, it's been a while, you can probably tell. It's been a while since I've set up a patch like this, so we are learning together. So let's just give it a size to start with. Let's say it's, I don't know, something like that. And give it its title, and I always do. Okay, so I think the parameters on the interface here, we're going to have balance, we're going to have reroll. Maybe that's it to start with. Oh, and mode is an important one. So let me grab from the implementation. Don't need that anymore. grab the mode, balance, and reroll. Did I? Oh yeah, reroll. Just copy those and put them here. Did I size this right? Oh, almost. Okay. Oops. This kind of like tedious stuff I've actually grown to like with pure data sicko, and that it's kind of meditative just doing this sort of stuff. It's kind of boring, I'm sure, to watch, but it's still kind of fun. Okay, so basically what we're going to do, this, where'd the mouse go? This is the mode selector here, so we're going to pass that out as a message. The mode. Oh, and let me do that as well. This is the balance, but I think it already is going to be printing correctly. Let me see if I can determine that. Yeah, okay. So that one's good to go. We can just pass it out. It's formatted as we need. So this one can just go straight out, and then this one reroll. And I actually don't remember why in the sequencer I had this input, but I'm just gonna keep it anyway in case past me is smarter than current me, which is very possible. And then let me also just give myself a little error message. Okay. So that's, I think, pretty much it for the parameters. So here we are in the Weaver patch that's gonna kind of contain both the parameters and the implementation. And the parameters look fine to me. And let's just, as a test, print things out. Oops, got way too many windows. So the mode is working. Reroll, that's interesting. And then, okay, so what's going on with reroll? $1 argument number out of range. Maybe you can't do a message like this with bangs. I forget. Maybe you can just do this. Yeah, I'll just go with that for now. Cool. Okay, so the interface I think is working fine. I guess let me try this. Maybe this is why that seems bad. Okay, that seems good. Yeah, that seems bad. Am I not routing the mode correctly? Oh. The mode is this third one. Yeah, I did that backwards. Mode goes into this one. Reroll goes into this one. Okay. I'm not sure why I would want to do this, but I must have had a good reason at some point. Okay. That's enough of that. Okay, so the fourth inlet is going to go here. Oh, and let me also, the unfortunate thing of setting things up as I tend to is I'm going to need to copy the graphing, so 204 and 80. So that needs to exist both in the parameters kind of interface patch as well as the main patch. 204, 80. So I can just kind of pass the parameters straight through. What the heck is going on? Okay, cool. So now, elsewhere, if I just say I want to make a weaver, then it's going to look like the parameters, which is cool. So jumping back to this window. So for the implementation, I actually do need to change some things. So we need an inlet for those messages. And then we had the balance, the reroll, and the mode. So for the balance, just do some checking. We want to make sure it's between 0 and 1. Most of what I do, I've just settled on everything being between 0 and 1, and then I can like scale it to other values, but it's just easier to expect that everything's in that range. And then we'll send it out as the balance, and don't need this. The reroll, make sure that's a bang. And then the mode, so that needs to be either a 0 or a 1, so I'm just going to convert it to a toggle here. And cool. Okay. Cool. So in our patch here, this needs to go into the new right inlet, and then these three need to go in the first three. Oops. Maybe that is enough to get this all working. So we can test it out. Cool, so yeah, I have no idea if this is actually going to work, but let's test it. So the basic way this patch works, the idea is that it's going to take in two sequences, sequence A and sequence B. So just set up a metronome. How does this work? Yeah, to create. So we've got our metronome kind of ticking away. Ah, right, okay. Sorry, I'm just getting some stuff set up, and then I will explain what's happening in a second. Okay, so the basic idea of this patch is that I talked about these a bit earlier, this sequ thing. It's a sequencer. So the idea of Weaver is that it takes in two sequences, and I was thinking mainly that they're like melodic sequences, but they could be anything. They could be sequences of like filter cutoff or delay time or whatever. But I was mainly thinking about melodic sequences. So let's say these are two melodic sequencers, and they're just spitting out values from 0 to 1. So yeah, I guess I'll talk about how these work first. So this one on the left, we'll use this as an example. Let's kind of make this a bit faster. So you can see it's spitting out these values, and we can't hear it because I don't have the volume up, but it's a loop of 16 steps. So if I change it to 2 steps, it's more obvious that it's just going back between two values, or 1 step. It's just the one step. So yeah, this is the length of the sequence. This gen will generate a new sequence. So right now you can see it's going back between 0.57 and 0.87. If I hold this down, then every time it receives a new beat from the metronome, when the value is 1, it's always going to generate a new value on that beat. And then I can set it back to 0, and it will kind of lock in to the values that it was most recently generated. Or if instead of 0 and 1, I can change this to some value in between, like 0.5. And this means that every time it receives a beat, there's a 50% chance that it's going to generate a new value instead of using the kind of the one in the sequence. And then it's got some other fun stuff. This is just the offset and the clock division. But this is the other kind of fun part, is that this is the density. So basically, well, it would be easier to understand with some audio. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let me get both of these guys pumping out sequences really fast. Let's give this one a length of 7 and a length of 4. Okay, so you can see they're both kind of pumping out looping sequences. So what Weaver, well, that's to demonstrate the idea for Weaver, is it receives two sequences and it combines them into one sequence. So these are both melodic sequences. So we could play them in parallel with two different oscillators and we'd hear both sequences at the same time. But the idea here is instead of doing that, we're going to feed them into Weaver and then we're going to have a new single one sequence that's derived from kind of the input of the two. And then these controls on the interface we just made are going to dictate how these two sequences get combined. So interpolate, the way this one works is and you could kind of see that there are kind of like rests in these sequences. So they're not giving a new value every single beat. Sometimes there's a beat where they don't provide a value. So in those cases, say only the sequencer on the left gives us a value, then in the interpolate mode, we're just going to get that value back unchanged. And same thing, if only the one on the right gives us a value, then Weaver will give us just that value unchanged. But if they both give a value on a certain beat, then the interpolate mode, what that's going to do, ideally, again, I haven't tested this yet, but it's going to give us a value in between the two from the sequencers and somewhere in between. And this kind of determines the weight of, like, is it closer to the value on the left, the sequencer on the left, or is it closer to the sequencer on the right, is determined by where this balance slider is. The interleave is a little different. Actually, let's just test that this works. I'll stop yapping. So turn it up. Let me, can't actually tell. How are we gonna test this? Let's try this. And that's already a bit grating to my ear, so I'm gonna change it. I'm at least gonna give it a envelope. Okay, so let's just listen to the sequencer on the left. Okay, I understand what that sequence is. Okay, let's just listen to the sequencer on the right. And give it a more easy to understand length. Okay. Cool. Okay, so now that we have kind of heard those two in isolation, okay, so it definitely seems like it's not not working. Okay, so that behavior is correct, where if it's only getting one sequence, then it should just give us the value back regardless of where the balance is. So on the beats where they both provide a value, that's where things are getting weird. Let me slow down the tempo. once more. What was that? It feels way too fast. Let me change this to like 2 seconds. Very slow. Okay, maybe that is working a bit. Change it to 1/8 of a second. Oh, I know what's happening. I am stupid. Okay, we'll just keep the clock division on 1 for now. Okay, this might actually be working, but that's something I hadn't thought about, is that the 2 sequencers, let me close this. The 2 sequencers, because they were using clock division, and I created them at different times while the metronome was running, so this one, every 4 beats, these are both set to 4, so every 4 beats, this one would output its new value, and every 4 beats, this one would output its new value, but they were different, they had different starting points, so they were like staggered. So if I just set this to 1, then every time they receive a beat, they're going to be outputting a value. Okay, so now okay, so again, what we're trying to test is that in this interpolate mode, when both sequencers provide a value, then when this is all the way left, ideally we should only be getting this sequence, and when it's all the way right, we should only be getting this sequence. If it's in between and they both provide a value, then we'll get a note somewhere in between them. And if on a beat only one of them provides a value, then we should just get that value back regardless of where this balance slider is. And actually, let me do this one more time just so we can get familiar with what these 2 sequences are. Okay, that one's very easy. Okay, got that one. And this one is just the 2. Cool. Okay, so now all the way left, or actually all the way right. this is actually going to be very tricky to tell if, you know what, I just had an idea. Let me, so I'm going to keep this left sequencer kind of scaled down to lower notes, maybe not that low, and this one to higher notes. So okay, I think that is working. So we're always getting the higher notes, except for the one kind of gap where this one doesn't provide a note and this one does, and then we get that lower note. And that's because the balance is all the way to the right. So if I move the balance all the way to the left, then we should get the lower note, that 0.077. We should also be getting that one. So let's try that. Yep. Okay. And then in between, it really isn't as intuitive, like, as I had envisioned. Maybe I'll get used to it. So that's the interpolate mode. I'm just going to say it's working. I'm not actually, here, why don't I do this? This will make it much more clear. So, yeah, okay. So it's always this one, except for, yeah, okay, so that's definitely working. Cool. Interpolate mode works. So now interleave mode, what's going on there is the idea is that, oh, I actually haven't checked the chat at all. I don't even know if, oh, someone's here. Oh, hey, Dave. Okay, yeah, thanks for stopping by. This is my first time streaming, and it didn't even occur to me to check the chat, but I'm glad you stopped by. Yeah, and thank you to anyone who has stopped by and I didn't notice, or who watches this in the future. This is sort of an experiment, so it's very, very fun for me. I'm enjoying this. Okay, so interleave mode, what that is supposed to do should be easier to determine if it's working just from a listening point of view. Interpolate mode on those beats where both provided a note, then it gave you a value in between. So like if this is at 0.5, then like when this one gives 141 and this one gives 776, this one is giving 506. So it's kind of like about halfway in between because of this balance. But what the interleave mode is going to do is it's never going to give you a value in between. It's always going to be either a value from this sequence or a value from this sequence. And to the left, it's more likely, yeah, let's just listen. It's too hard to explain. Okay, so all the way left, yeah, it's just going to give us this sequence, even on the beats when this one's providing something and this one's not, we're still just going to get this one. And likewise, all the way to the right, we should just be getting, yep. But in between, Okay, there we go. Well, we should be getting the notes from the two sequences interleaved, and we're definitely not getting that. Let me pump these all the way up. Okay, so this is definitely broken. So let's try and figure out what's going on here. So we're not getting the bias every step. Why isn't that happening? There we go. Okay. There was a bug. Okay, so sounds like it's fixed. So all the way to the right, we should just get this one. All the way to the left, just this one. In between, oh, I think I should add a length parameter. Okay, but in between, we're getting about half this sequence, half this sequence. If I move it to the left, it's going to be more of the kind of bassier with occasional, this one getting interjected. More to the right, it's going to be more this one with occasional bassy. And the reroll kind of changes the chances. Let me change this to just be 8 steps long. Okay, so it's working, I think. What the reroll does is, so right now this is saying we want only 17% of the notes from the right sequence and what, like 83% of the notes from the left sequence. So we're like way biased toward the left sequence. And you can hear it is about that, like 17% of the notes are coming from this higher pitched right sequence. But what the reroll does is it changes kind of which 17% of the notes come from the right sequence. So you can hear right now it's just that like da 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 da. Just that one is coming from here. But if I reroll, in theory, we'll get a different 17% coming from this right sequence. So, yeah. Okay. I need to start work, my job. But I'm going to say, so the next steps for Weaver, I think I need to add a length and offset parameter similar to this. That should be really easy. And then hopefully next time we can see it in a more interesting kind of musical context, because these sequences were very annoying to me, and probably to you too, but it's helpful for debugging. And I guess before I go, I'll just kind of talk about the context of why I thought this would be interesting. Is up until now, like 99% of my pure data usage has been kind of generated. It's been generative stuff. So I haven't been, performing in any melodies or anything like that. It's more like I'll get a sequence to a place I like. I didn't talk about this, but these are save buttons, so I can save up to 8 patterns, and these are recall buttons where I can save something to this pattern or this slot and then mess with it. Maybe I generate a different sequence and I like this one and I'll save it to this slot. Then with this I can kind of jump between the saved sequences. And that's been most of how I've generated melodies or had melodies happen, is through that kind of, I'm not writing the melodies myself, I'm like sort of guiding this random process and sort of curating the ones I like and saving them and then jumping back to them. And I thought that it would be fun to just be able to actually perform in melodies instead of generating them like that. So I made a patch. It's just so I can use my computer keyboard to play. Only take the ons when I push the key down. Yeah, so I can type on my computer keyboard to perform some brilliant melodies, and then I made a MIDI sequencer thing, which, let's see if I can remember how this works. I think it takes in a beat. Where are the inlets? Oh, pitch and velocity, clear current step in it. Okay, so the beat is gonna go here. Let me make this a Oh. This is still kind of new to me how this works. Okay, I see. So this goes here. And right, okay. So yeah, I can perform in my brilliant melodies, like, let's say, and I think I need a poly object. Okay, I'm not going to get into it right now. The idea is that I can loop some melodies. Let's say okay. Yep, there's my great melody that I just performed on my, computer keyboard. And I thought it would be fun to and it's looping thanks to this MIDI sequencer, which recorded my key presses and stuff, and it's looping them with the metronome. And I thought, since in the past I've been very reliant on these generated sequences, that it would be neat to have one of those and then also be able to perform in a sequence myself, and then kind of play with and have them both feed into a single voice, and kind of play with how much of it is my human performance and how much of it is this like more generated sequence. And these were kind of the two ways I thought it might be fun to either just explore the space in between these two sequences. So this was just kind of came to me like before bed one night. So yeah, that's kind of the impetus behind Weaver, and I still need to clean up these and make them easier to use, because as you can see, I just made them like a week or two ago or something, and I already forget how they work. But so I need to make it a bit easier on myself to use them in the future. But that's a basic idea of this patch, and I think it's pretty much working. So we'll see once we do some like jams with it to see if it's actually like fun and interesting and gives good results, or if it was just a fun exercise to make this thing and I'm never going to use it again. But that's part of the fun of pure data. Anyway, yeah, I really have to start working. So thank you all for tuning in, everyone who did tune in or is watching this in the future, and maybe I will do this again in the future. I'm not sure. Probably will. Okay. Anyway, have a good Wednesday, everyone. Goodbye.